Okay.
Wonderful.
And hopefully you'll let me know if they can't hear me. So hopefully
Yes.
you all can hear me that are virtual. So let me go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Mike Finnicum, and I work for a company called CSRA, and I'll explain that later, but I just really want to start by thanking Emily on behalf of National American University for inviting me here today. So I get a chance to talk about the things that I love, which is kind of fun. I get a chance to talk about myself a little bit, but more important than that, the industry that I support, the company that I work for, the folks that work for me, and why I place value on education. So hope to cover all those things. You know, I really want this to be low-key. Stop me with any questions. You won't really throw me off track. I probably have 20, 30 minutes of information to cover. But again, I really want you to feel free to stop me. We could go down any number of rabbit trails that you want to.
Wonderful.
So, you know, I also want to say that I appreciate the core values of National American University. You know, when we find them online, they use terms like high quality. They use terms like supportive. They use terms like technical and professional career programs, not just a program, but a career program. And I really appreciate that. In fact, National American University has been a great help to my own personal family recently in our own endeavors with undergraduate programs. So I'm very appreciative for that as well. So I would like to start, though, with two trivia questions. And I have some empty pens to give away if anybody. So I'm gonna listen carefully for the answer, and if someone can even answer it virtually, we'll try to get this fancy pen into your hands. So the first trivia question I heard when I was driving here this afternoon. So what, and of course I don't know what a municipal park is per se, but what is the most visited municipal park in the entire country? Which is the most visited municipal park in the entire country of America? Anybody know? Any guess?
Central.
That's number two. That's number two.
What did you say? Central.
Yeah, so what?
I think Garden of the Gods is up there. Is that
They announced that today from Mayor John
it? Thank
Summers.
you.
No, they announced that today during an interview. The Garden of the Gods is the #1 visited municipal park in the country, with Central Park being second. So that's my cheap trivia question. Now, another maybe closer to home trivia question. So all of you know, I'm sure, the National American University got its start in Rapid City, South Dakota, right? What year?
41.
41. Boy, she gets.
No, don't look at your name.
75 years.
Yes. There you go. Goes in my line. So again, you know, and part of my little presentation is to encourage people to be prepared. Now, some of this might be kind of targeted towards students, but y'all can pass that on to students if need be. So having said all that, let's talk a little bit about my background. So I graduated back in 1986 from the Air Force Academy with a degree in political science. Now, of course, for some of you, 1986 is the brown shoe days, right? That's where you had to walk to and from school. It snowed every day. It was uphill both ways, right? So, and then I went in to fly helicopters with the Air Force for about 12 years. And I went on to obtain a master's degree in space studies from the University of North Dakota. So that is my education background. And again, I flew helicopters for 12 years, got out, brought my wife back home here to Colorado Springs where she grew up, and we've been here ever since. So I've been a defense contractor for about 20 years. Seems like yesterday, but nonetheless, I've been doing that for about 20 years, and I've been focusing primarily on missile defense programs. So missile defense analysis, and now I'm a senior program manager with CSRA here in town. I've been really working for the same company for about 14 years. So I've really enjoyed just the legacy and the long-standing work I can do for CSRA. And you know, I love supporting programs that get national attention almost every day. So I'm assuming you're tracking what's happening in North Korea, Iran, places like that. a real hotbed for missile defense activity. And of course, so the program I support really gets national attention on Capitol Hill almost every day. Just yesterday, there was a medium-range ballistic missile interceptor called THAAD that had a successful intercept, which again is showing the enemy that we have the means to protect ourselves and shoot down a bullet with a bullet. That's pretty much the program and the agency I've been supporting for the last 14 years. So let me talk a little bit about what's CSRA. CSRA doesn't stand for anything, but prior to CSRA, I worked for CSC, Computer Sciences Corporation. If you've ever heard of CSC, CSC was the first publicly traded software company on the New York Stock Exchange way back in the 1960s, the decade that I was born. So CSC had a long-standing history, and I was working for them. And then they decided to more focus on commercial work, so they spun off their government arm about 2 years ago. And those of us supporting government programs, we merged with a company called SRA International, just another defense contractor. So now we're CSRA. Again, doesn't stand for anything, but we have a whole lot of work. There's 4 major pillars or 4 major sectors within CSRA. The first one, of course, is defense. Those of you familiar with the Department of Defense know it's acronym soup, right? So DOD, DOE, DOT, NASA, NATO, FEMA, IRS, MOUSE, just about any acronym you can think of. Just okay. And something else recently that CSRA has been doing is we have been training law enforcement and border security personnel around the world to detect, track, and interdict the spread of weapons of mass destruction. So that's a little bit of fun work that CSRA has been doing in the DoD world. We also have a large sector doing intel and homeland security. So that's definitely interesting, a lot of black world stuff. We also have a health sector. For example, we are doing IT work for Medicaid, Medicare in the state of New York. So that's just a program we're doing. Also, and we have some civil work as well. So those are the 4 main pillars within CSRA. So here, more towards hometown here in Colorado Springs. Of course, we're supporting the Missile Defense Agency at Schriever Air Force Base, if you know where that is, out on the Eastern Plains. Of course, the Eastern Plains, it has a great view of the Front Range, but I think the tumbleweed is the national or the state flower out there. Anyway, yeah. And we also have folks in town supporting the Defense Intelligence Agency. We have folks supporting U.S. Northern Command. We have folks supporting NORAD in town, and a big presence supporting the warfighter at Fort Carson. So a lot of folks doing medical training and doing tank and helicopter simulators at Fort Carson. So that's pretty much our footprint here in town. So I wanted to give you an idea of that. Of course, CSRA has about 1,000 openings at any one given time within the company. And of course, a lot of them are remote work authorized. You can sit at your kitchen table and work from home all day long. You could work in our company building, which is down near Platt and Powers, actually pretty close to the southern campus for NAU. Or you could work at the government location. Most of the 75 folks that work directly for me work at Schriever Air Force Base, doing IT work. So again, a little bit more about CSRA. So I thought you might find it interesting to kind of know the flavor of folks that work directly for me. So again, being IT professionals, here's the sort of folks that I have working for me today. So I have help desk folks. I have system administrators. In fact, do you have a help desk or system administrator person in the building here, or does that person travel back and forth? So
our IT travels back and forth between Denver and here in the south. And
We have a central IT support, yeah.
okay, so sometimes you can't reach out and grab somebody and shake them and say, please fix my problem.
Yes, sometimes.
Sometimes
Yes,
you gotta wait.
yes.
Okay.
Or
okay.
figure it out ourselves.
Yeah, oh,
Let's figure it out.
that's good.
or
Well,
Jenny.
Yeah.
I'm convinced I have some of the smartest people in the industry doing this sort of work. I mean, they are just world class. So anyway, so I have help desk folks, system administrator folks, cybersecurity folks, again, doing missile defense. And cybersecurity, as you probably know, is a really big deal these days. Sometimes half the positions they're trying to fill is cybersecurity. They can't find enough cybersecurity folks, especially folks with clearances and the training and the education to go along. So cybersecurity is a big deal. So I have some of those folks working for me. Also have virtualization cloud engineers working for me. Even though a lot of the stuff is super secret, sensitive, classified stuff, there's still virtualization and cloud programs that support all the DoD. I have metric engineers that really have a strong background in math, physics. I have project managers under me. I have big data storage folks under me. I have server engineers. I have Windows, Linux, Unix engineers. I have network engineers, software engineers that support modeling and simulation. So, of course, I'm an expert in all these areas. Actually, didn't I say I have a degree in poli-sci? I do. But, you know, sometimes it's being in the right place at the right time, and I can manage these folks well. I don't necessarily understand what they're doing. But, again, part of it is setting yourself ahead of the competition, apart from the competition. And I'll talk more about that here shortly. But I was really in the right place at the right time, and I have been so blessed to manage these folks and to support a national program. It's just fun. It's a lot of fun. So a lot of diverse opportunities, a lot of opportunities in the industry. So, and of course, with 5 military installations, you'd expect there's a lot of work like this going on. So something, as I alluded to, I really like to talk about is just how to set yourself apart. I'd be curious to hear sometime how National American University sets itself apart from the competitors. That would be an interesting thing. I've never actually sat down and talked with somebody about that. But again, it's important to set yourself ahead of the competition. And so one thing, you know, I'm not a research expert, but a recent Denver Post article reported that current research shows back in April of this year, Colorado had about 60,000 unfilled jobs. That to me is a ton. 60,000 unfilled jobs, nearly one each for the 68,300 unemployed people counted in the state. So you'd think the math would mostly add up, 60,000 opportunities, 68,000 people looking for work, or at least unemployed. They may not show up at a job fair, but they're unemployed. You'd almost think, sure, just throw them all in there and your life is good. But again, you got to set yourself ahead of the competition, right? So the article went on to claim that Colorado has the lowest unemployment rate in the country right now at 2.3%. Have anybody else heard that? Anybody online? Had you heard that? Again, that just dumbfounds me. I've always heard of Texas and North Dakota because all of their oil industry, they have such a low unemployment rate. And of course, Colorado has a growing oil market as well. But for us to have the lowest unemployment rate in the nation, it was news to me. So back to how you set yourself apart from the competition. So I am a firm believer in the importance of college and also certifications and training. This will set you apart from much of the competition. So I asked myself, is a degree always required to be successful? Well, no, it's not always required. But as a hiring manager, and I've probably hired 300 to 400 people in the last 10 years. If I had 2 identical candidates I'm considering hiring, right? And of course, if they have an associate, if one of the candidates has an associate's degree or higher, then I will likely give the nod to the person with an associate's degree or higher because they've just proven themselves that they have what it takes to finish a degree, to finish something that they've started. You know, I don't care if it takes 5 or 10 years, really. And sometimes with families and work and whatnot, you're going to school at night and going to a great place like National American University. Sometimes it takes a while, and that's okay. But I'll often give the nod to someone with a degree if I have 2 pretty equally qualified folks. So, and of course, by the way, do I specifically use my degrees in my day-to-day work? Not really specifically. Political science and space studies, I manage an IT contract for DoD. So do I really use the knowledge I gained 25 years ago on the space shuttle, which is gone away? So not really, but again, do I think I wasted my time to get those degrees? No, I really don't. I believe they were important, and I stuck with it, and I got through it, and that has helped me get the job really I have today. It wasn't necessarily that I'm an alum of the University of North Dakota, and I'll probably never go back there ever again. But nonetheless, it's really helped me land the opportunities that I have. So now, sometimes an associate's degree or higher is the bare minimum that a person needs to have to get into the slot that they're being considered for. Some, every contract is different, and every manager is different, every program is different. So sometimes you don't have to have a degree, but sometimes an associate's or higher is required to get your foot in the door. And of course, technology changes so constantly. I mean, I still have a computer at home on Windows Vista.
Oh,
If you remember what Windows Vista is.
we all skipped over this stuff.
But the kids just use it for typing papers and doing school and whatnot and stuff. So it really still serves my purpose. But technology changes so constantly, and so do certification requirements. You ever heard of the CompTIA Security Plus certification? The Net Plus certification, PMP certification, and ITIL certification. In the DoD world, a Security Plus certification is required by about 95% of the positions. At least in my little world, for the Missile Defense Agency, they love certifications. The Security Plus is required for about 95% of the employees. Now, I will say that about 60% of my employees have a degree, whether that be associates, bachelor's, master's. I have a couple of PhD folks. But in the commercial world, it's my understanding that the Security Plus cert is good for life. Once you have it, it's good forever in the commercial world. Now the DoD world, I don't know about DOE or DOT or some of the other government organizations, state of Colorado, city of Colorado Springs, I really don't know. But for DoD, you have to continue to get the continuing education credits. You have to keep that puppy current or they'll kick you out of your job. So it's good for 3 years, right? And assuming you get your required training and whatnot, then it renews every 3 years and off you go. So I don't know if you've heard any of that before, you may have, but so these certifications are in some ways almost as important as a degree. So again, that said, any questions so far just about CSRA or about?
Yeah, I have some questions.
Sure.
So would you say the majority of your employees require military experience?
I would say at least 50 to 60% have a military background. A lot of them are retired. Many of them, just like me, they served and got out. They're veterans though, so.
Okay, yeah, we have a large military population.
Yeah, which I
yeah.
really like.
Mhm.
I really like.
And then also, I guess, to find these jobs, would they just look on this website? Is that where you guys post them? Do you post them at other places?
We do.
or-
I'll get to that in
Okay.
just a second, but make sure I don't gloss
Okay.
over that. A good question. Yes, ma'am?
So I guess just bouncing off of the fact that you said 60% of your associates have degrees.
Yep.
From your experience, does it matter at all where those degrees are from? Because that's something that we run into a lot here
Yes.
because of, oh, you're a for-profit university. Oh, we don't really, we're afraid of this, the news says this. Or is it just pretty much, you've continued your degree, it's current, it's applicable, you're using it?
That's a really good question. From a company perspective, CSRA really doesn't matter where you got the degree from, assuming it's an accredited institution.
Sure,
I know
right.
NAU
Yep.
is accredited. So then it kind of boils down to the individual program or even the hiring manager. So again, for the last 11 years, I've been doing a lot of hiring and researching and reading resumes. And for me, it's not necessarily important where they get a degree, but that they have one. Now, of course, being right here in Colorado Springs, I value NAU degrees, CTU degrees, UCCS degrees, that sort of thing. I am in the process of going after a candidate that has some big data skills like nobody else that we've been able to find. he got his degree 25 years ago in India. So if I was just hard over on a U.S. college, whatever, then I probably would pass him over. But he has a security clearance. He's worked for DoD programs. His bachelor's is from India. So in that sense, you know, I as a manager, I'm not hard over if it has to be one college or another, that sort of thing. So I hope that answers the question. But it's still a good question. And again, I kind of go back to how do you set yourself ahead of the competition, that sort of thing. I know my son is getting his master's degree. I won't tell you where from. However, that college has 16 required classes, and a different one only has 12 required classes, costing about an extra $15,000, $20,000 out of his pocket. And I'm going, why did you choose this one over the, you know, whatever. I mean, you can have that discussion all day long, but nonetheless. So, any other questions?
How are the advancement opportunities in this company?
Yeah, well, again, it kind of depends on the contract, because every contract is different. For example, the contract I manage, the missile defense contract, it's a CSRA is a subcontractor to a larger company, and it's a $4 billion contract. So there's 1,500 people. So in any one given day, you might have 10, 20, 30 employees retire or move on or get fired or whatever the case may be. There is opportunities galore. And so probably in any one given year, I promote 10 of my 70, 75 people and give them a nice 10 to 20% out-of-cycle pay raise. Tell me if you'd like to get a 10 to 20% out-of-cycle pay raise in a year.
Yeah.
Sure, why not? So the opportunities are really strong and they're really good. Now, of course, again, the contract my folks work on, it's a 10-year contract. We're at the 11.5-year point. And you know, again, a $4 billion contract, it takes a lot to recompete such an animal. So they're gonna award it, you know, sometime in the near future. So sometimes, you know, sometimes contracts are 3 years long, sometimes they're 5 years long, 10 years long. So in that sense, it could be a real struggle. It can be hard to work in an environment like that. If you're in an Edward Jones or a Wells Fargo investment partner, you could probably stay there for 50 years.
Sure.
But
This is like, when you hire people, it's all based on contract, like they are brought
Yes.
on under the terms that it's temporary.
right, of course,
Okay.
you know, missile defense got its start when Ronald Reagan made his Star Wars speech back in the early 1980s. So the technology has been there for 30, 35 years, and I'm not thinking missile defense is going to go away anytime soon.
Sure.
Maybe I should, you know, thank Kim Jong-un for the job security for what he's doing in North Korea. I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but nonetheless, it's not going away anytime soon. So again, you know, the industry is here for a long time.
Okay.
Are these GS positions?
They're not. They're you know, I call myself a government contractor. We're not a government employee like GS, and we're certainly not military. So we're a private company doing work on behalf of the government.
You guys do any sort of internships? Or?
We do.
Oh, okay.
We do. In fact, I had that discussion back in January with Jennifer down the hallway. The Missile Defense Program has a robust intern program, but they have to try to get that going really early in the season. Back in January and February, they were really looking to finalize their candidates and trying to get them clearances. I'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's
So you did? Did you shop some Steve Johnson?
yes. I mean, it's a high-speed thing to be able to work on the base, get $15 to $20 an hour, and be learning, you know, the tools of the trade to see if when you graduate, if that's where you want to call home for the future. So, yeah, the intern program's alive and well.
Great.
Yeah. So I just want to also, you know, keep in mind that even though CSRA is a high-tech engineering and IT company, every company out there needs folks like physical security. They need finance, they need accounting, they need legal, they need labor folks, they need personnel management like me. Really, there's just a whole host of opportunities. So keep in mind, you might say, oh, I can't do that because I'm not IT. Well, that doesn't mean that you can't find great opportunities. So Again, just keep that in mind. It doesn't have to be all about IT. Right?
Sure, like, do you like HR people and?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You know, we don't have any HR people right here in town, but I have HR people in Ohio, in Florida, in Virginia, in different places that support me directly. So again, that's one of those.
Is there like a headquarters that you report to, or?
Our company headquarters is in Falls Church, Virginia. And again, with 19,000 folks, a lot of them are back east. We're just kind of a small mom and pop shop here in the Springs, but again, with five DoD installations, we're really targeting the Springs for growth. So now I did want to address a little bit about the security clearance process. Don't know what you've heard. There's a lot of rumors out there. For several years, I could take somebody off the street and get them an interim secret clearance in a couple of weeks and put them to work. Most of the time, it just requires an interim secret to get to work, and it would take about 2 weeks. Now, if you've had kind of a repeated history of maybe financial problems, criminal problems, drug use, that sort of thing, then that can slow down the process or stop the process. But by and large, 2 weeks later, I can put a person to work. Well, now it's changed. It's about 4 to 6 months to get someone an interim secret clearance. Why is that? Again, it's hard to say. It could be due to a lack of funding, a lack of just the number of people supporting the security clearance industry. Some people say it's because the Chinese hacked into the Office of Personnel Management website a year and a half ago and stole the clearance information for 20 million Americans. Maybe that slowed it all down. It's hard to say. So I would say that the security clearance process right now is very arduous, it's very laborious, it's time consuming. And you know, it's too bad a person can't sponsor themselves for a clearance, but you really can't. You need a company like CSRA and the hundreds of other companies to support your clearance request. But sooner or later, if you bide your time, you can get your clearance, but it's kind of hard. So, you know, the perfect candidate for me might have a degree, a Security Plus certification, a clearance, and of course, there's not very many people in Colorado Springs right now looking for work that has that package. So I'm constantly talking to people like GIs getting out of the military in Germany, trying to hire a guy right now that's doing that. Folks at Fort Carson, folks in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, whatever it might be. Pretty much folks have to be willing to relocate for the right job. Again, that's another way to set yourself apart is if you're willing to relocate. Of course, I don't want to relocate. I almost pulled the trigger and moved to Huntsville, Alabama several years ago. I'm kind of glad I didn't, even though it's a good place to work. I got a lot of my employees work in Huntsville, Alabama, the home of modern rocket science. Of course, back at the end of World War II, we grabbed all those rocket scientists from Germany and threw them in Huntsville, Alabama. So anyway, just another way to set yourself apart. So why do people go to college? Somebody, just throw it out there. Why are people interested in a place like National American University?
Better opportunities.
For work, better opportunities. They want to grow, man.
Higher pay.
Higher pay, that's, yeah, that's a good one. Why else might they go to college? Just, again, to maybe set themselves apart from the competition. And again, much of my day-to-day work as a manager is trying to grow my program. So I focus a lot on folks that set themselves apart. So I sincerely appreciate folks that are prepared, proactive, responsive, and thorough. So what do I mean by all that? I'll talk briefly about those. So I want folks that are prepared. So for example, they've done their homework. They might know that National American University got their start in Rapid City in 1941. They might know that the CSRA CEO, president, is Larry Pryor. They just might know that. It's nice if they come prepared. So that is something I look for. I really want them to be proactive. I just want them to kind of go the extra mile. It's kind of gone by the wayside to type up a cover letter in addition to a resume. But again, if I'm kind of looking at two folks and one person actually took the time to prepare a cover letter, I'll actually take the time to read it. And that kind of helps me decide as a manager as well. I want folks to be responsive, okay? I'll send an email out to a person, they'll find the website, they'll apply for a position, and I grab their resume and go, wow, that's very interesting. I'll send them an email. Of course, sometimes it goes into junk mail. Sometimes they're like, I don't know what a CSRA is, because they've forgotten, they've come to the website. I don't know who my Finnicum is, so they might just delete it. But a week or two later, I'll get an email from them. They're just not very responsive. I'll often just do the old-fashioned way, pick up the phone and try to call them. And I'll get their answering message, and it says that the inbox is full, and I can't leave a message.
Or the email's not set up.
I get that almost or it's not set up. I get that almost every week, and I'm going, okay, not super responsive, not really prepared, not really proactive, that sort of thing. And I really wanted to be thorough. I'll look at resumes, for example, and it's just filled with typos. And I'm sorry, if you really want that next great opportunity, you're going to read it and reread it and wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it and make sure there's no typos in there. So again, that's just what I've been looking for the last 11 years for my folks. So yes, when CSRA posts a position, it'll typically go to all the good big websites, monster.com, dice.com, careerbuilder.com, LinkedIn, other places like that. And so
Indeed or no?
we do Indeed.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. And of course, there's a lot of websites out there. And of course, I try to go the extra mile and go to the individual company's website so I can see what they're about. I mean, there's a lot of good companies out there, but it depends on what you want to call home. Would you like to set yourself up with the reputation CSRA has? So you need to do your homework in that sense. But yes, CSRA posts their positions on all the major websites. And again, here's something that just kind of blew me out of the water. I was manning a booth at a job fair recently, and a guy came up, and he just was, he wasn't afraid to say sir or ma'am. Some people are afraid they just, they walk up and their hats turned on backwards, and they say, so what do you got for me? And they got jeans on, and there's even holes in the jeans. It's like, how hard is it to put on your Sunday best? How hard is it to use sir or ma'am? To have a resume, maybe a cover letter, ready to go. I just don't think it's that hard. So it's not that hard to set yourself ahead of the competition. But this young man, it's like, I have to find a slot for him. He didn't have a clearance. So I'm kind of hamstrung. So I started to work with him in opportunities CSRA wide as opposed to just right here, Car Springs. And about 3 weeks later, I get a card in the mail from him. A thank you card. Like, wow, what's this? Haven't seen one. Well, you know what was in it? A $5 gift certificate to Starbucks. I'm going, I've never seen that before. So is his resume still on my desk? Yes. If there's ever an opportunity, if the security clearance process ever gets more efficient, I'm going to get this guy a job. So anyway.
So if they don't have a security clearance, you won't.
Well, for me in my world right now, it's really hard to find them a job because I really can't just sponsor them for a clearance, hoping that they get it in 4 or 6 months, and then hoping that there's a slot open, and hoping I can, put them to work. It's really hard right now. That's why it's kind of an ugly thing right now, the whole clearance process.
So is there like a way that they could kind of sidestep that, like work with another company in order, like how, if a civilian, went into IT and then wanted to work there.
Yeah.
How could they prep themselves to get that clearance to go in?
One way is to just simply try to find a job in the company. Like there's positions inside of CSRA that doesn't require a clearance right now. There's a lot of them. And again, there's a lot of companies in town that can hire you to do different things on a contract, maybe supporting the work from the company building that does not require a clearance, but yet they do sponsor clearances. So you get in there, you make a name for yourself. They really like you to say, hey, boss, just to, for me to broaden my horizons, would you mind putting me in for a clearance? And that boss would say, I will do that because we have other programs and we might need you on those programs. So in that sense, you're in a company, you're making a name for yourself, and they'll put you in for clearance.
Sure, okay.
Again, it really limits folks. I mean, let's say you got an E8 or a retired colonel They served honorably for 25, 30 years. They got out and said, you know what, I want to try the commercial world for a while. And they go be an investment partner with Edward Jones. And it's 2 years and a day later. I'm tired of this commercial world. I want to go back and support DoD. And once the 2-year window hits, they got to start all over again. And I typically can't do anything with them at this point. It's really frustrating.
Yes.
So those of you out there that have a clearance and it's less than even if you're not using it, even if it's inactive, try to not let it go more than 2 years, because then you got to start all over again. It doesn't matter what you've done, what clearance you had. After 2 years and 1 minute, all bets are on. So, all that said, and I know that NAU's #1 priority is serving their students, and I really like that. And again, I've been a beneficiary of NAU's kindness with my own family and whatnot. So that's really pretty much just what I wanted to share today as far as my company, the industry, and just how to set yourself apart a little bit. So what other questions do you have?
I have some more questions.
I appreciate it.
So would you say that this is a position that like you have to have a certain mental toughness to like manage the day-to-day? Because it sounds like you're dealing with some pretty heavy, I mean, threats, and you need to be able to brush that off probably when you leave the door. Like I was thinking that there's certain personality types that probably wouldn't do well.
It's interesting because really, I mean, I've hired all personality types. I mean, I have to be somewhat flexible. I mean, my #1 job as a program manager is to take care of my people. If I am not taking care of my people, if they can't call me up at any time and talk about their problems, their gripes, complaints, whatever it is, then I just don't feel like I'm doing my job very well. So, yes, I've had some, I think 3 employees in the last 11 years that we've had to walk off the contract because it's not that they couldn't learn the technology, it's not that they couldn't pass their classes, but they just couldn't get along with people. They just flat out couldn't get along with people. So by and large, yeah, sure, I have to be somewhat tough in dealing with my folks, but they come to me almost every day with questions, concerns, and whatnot. But sometimes we say the software engineer wants to be in a room, leave him or her alone, don't mess with them, let them, do their thing, and they just love it. Some people want to be patted on the back at almost every turn. They're extroverts, introverts, all that. So pretty much any personality, any introvert, extrovert can succeed in the DoD world, for example, if they just have a little bit of initiative, a little bit of hard work ethic, and of course they really need to kind of stay out of trouble and stay away from drugs in the federal DoD world anyway, that sort of stuff. What else? Anything from the other campus?
I haven't gotten anything, guys.
Okay.
So
Mark, Melanie, did you have anything?
So let me just see if they.
I don't think so.
Anything? Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. I think we have at least one more question. Go ahead. An
The folks that
internship?
are doing
yeah,
internships, they have to have security clearance as well, or is that different with internships versus employment?
Yeah, it's program dependent, but on this program, supporting missile defense at Schriever, they do have to have a clearance. Again, that's why they start. In fact, they started in February this year, and probably half the interns, there just wasn't enough time to get them their clearances, so half the people couldn't start. So I think they're going to start in November, December this fall with the intern program. So we find folks that are, that we feel like have the aptitude for it, and we'll go get them their clearance. Well, it'd have to be a DoD interim clearance. So, awesome.
Yeah, and I think the South Campus is all good.
Okay.
They say thank you so much for the information. They really
Well, good. Again, there's some flyers and business cards here for anybody that has any follow-on questions. Again, that's what what I'm here is to try to represent CSRA and help you all out if I can.
Great.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming. Please